Welcome to this video. I'm Nikki Jovicic from LookUpStrata. This morning I'm joined by David Budgen, CEO of Bugden Allen Graham Lawyers. Hi David, thanks for joining us today.
G'day Nikki, how are you?
Very well, great to have you.
Thank you.
This video discusses changes to electronic land dealings coming into effect on the 11th of October 2021 and what these changes mean for consolidating and registering bylaws in New South Wales. David, I'll pass over to you. I know you've got a presentation for us and that will let us know what's happening in New South Wales from the 11th of October and what this means for all of our viewers.
Okay, thanks Nikki. All right, I'll just share my screen. All right. Well, look, thanks for the opportunity of presenting this topic. So basically, New South Wales is moving to what they call 100% e-conveyancing from the 11th of October 2021. Now, there's actually a number of land transactions that are already basically electronic and go through this process, but effectively from the 11th of October, other than some very small exceptions, pretty much every type of land dealing will be completely electronic. So the key changes that are coming out is firstly, certificates of title will no longer be considered a legal document. So they'll actually become redundant, and we'll talk about that briefly. All land dealings also will need to be lodged with land registry services through what they call a subscriber. And I'll talk a little bit about that. As I say, paper dealings will no longer be accepted. So up until now, you can actually lodge some of these dealings over the counter with land registry services. But again, this is all completely electronic. And what we're going to do today is going to focus on probably the most common thing that changes in the world of strata, and that's change of bylaws. So before we do that, I just wanted to sort of touch on the point that certificates of title will basically become no more from the 11th of October. And it is relevant for change of bylaws because up until now, you have had to basically have your original certificate of title when you lodged a change of bylaws. But now from the 11th of October, because certificates of title are being abolished, basically that's no longer required. Now, I just thought I would sort of let everyone know that it is an important change. And I know a lot of strata managers you know, for many years have held original certificates of title. So basically from the 11th, as I say, they become a redundant document. They're really junk. So there's really kind of three options. You just do nothing with them, just keep them. You can destroy them. But I don't know, maybe some of your owners' corporations may want to keep them or frame them. But as I say, they won't be needed from the 11th. So let's just talk about bylaws. And obviously today we're going to be focusing on the consolidation and the registration process, but I thought it'd be just important to sort of cover the four key steps. And as you can see, there's the drafting, there's the approval, there's the consolidation, and then there's the registration. And let's just have a look at what's changing. So in terms of the drafting and approval stages, there's very little changes. Obviously, when you draft bylaws, you can basically repeal existing bylaws, you can amend some of your bylaws, or you can add new ones. We always recommend that you make sure you get an experienced strata lawyer to do that. But there are some online tools now available, including a platform that our company has developed that you can now do that yourself. But really, that hasn't really changed. And similarly with the approval process, nothing's really changed there. But on the consolidation and the registration, this is obviously where things have changed. So when you do a change of bylaws in New South Wales, you're required to submit what we call a Form 15CH. And that typically was signed and stamped by the owners' corporation. Now that can now be done electronically. And in fact, that electronic sort of signing capabilities has actually been in place since March of last year due to COVID. Now, what has changed, obviously, is the registration process. So you no longer need a certificate of title and you can no longer do it over the counter. So it must now be done via PEXA, which I'll talk about in a moment. Okay, so let's just quickly have a look at the couple of the steps involved in bylaws. And the first one's obviously drafting your bylaws. As I say, it's always good to get an experienced strata lawyer to draft bylaws. And be very careful not to just copy and paste bylaws that may have been passed by the owners corporation in the past. Now, they're either subject to copyright, but also, and probably more importantly, it's very important that your bylaws are not only compliant with sort of, the legislation and relevant case law, but they also need to be consistent in terms of their wording and their language and their intention with the other bylaws that the scheme has put in place. So that's obviously a very important consideration in terms of drafting. In terms of approval, bylaws in New South Wales need to be approved via a special resolution of general meeting. So that can be obviously your annual general meeting, or you can call a special extraordinary general meeting. And it's also really important to make sure you get the meeting process right. So you need to ensure that there's proper notice given, that the meeting is convened properly, and also the minutes are properly recorded and distributed. Because, if any of those processes aren't done properly, it could potentially invalidate the decision where the bylaw was passed. And just also keep in mind that if you have a bylaw that gives an owner or more than one owner rights over the common property, such as a lease or a license over the common property, or they're getting exclusive use over the common property, it actually requires the written approval of all of the concerned owners. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so consolidation. The third step is consolidation. And this is basically the process of taking your old bylaws and then effectively incorporating your new bylaws and consolidating them into one document. And this document is referred to as the change of bylaws or consolidation of bylaws, which is the Form 15CH. Now, the way that this is currently being done at the moment is that typically the strata manager will have a Word file, which is effectively their current registered bylaws. And, firms like ourselves or some other firms that specialize in this area, they'll take that Word document and they'll effectively insert it into the Form 15CH. So there's nothing wrong with that process, it's fine, but just be careful that that Word file is the correct current registered version, because basically your current registered version of bylaws are actually as per what is on the title for the strata scheme. Now, in some cases, you may not have your bylaws in a Word format, and in that case, you basically need to go and do a search of the current registered bylaws that are on the title, and basically effectively retype all of those into this Form 15CH. Now, sometimes you have some schemes that have changed their bylaws numerous times over the years, and every change is effectively a different dealing number. So you need to be really careful when you do this consolidation work that you make sure that all of those changes are properly reflected in the document. And look, it's really highly recommended that you get someone experienced in this area to do this work, because if you do sort of make any mistakes or have any omissions, there could potentially be some serious consequences. Now, this is the Form 15CH, so it's basically an approved form from Land Registry Services, and essentially the cover page has the owners corporation strata plan number, the address, the details of any bylaws that are being repealed, added to, or amended, and then the form is typically signed by the owners corporation. Now, the owners corporation could either be the committee members, say 2 committee members for a self-managed scheme, but typically the strata manager would have the delegated authority to sign this. So this is basically what needs to be completed. It needs to be signed and stamped by the owners corporation. And obviously now with this new change of process to an electronic dealing, it needs to be saved as an electronic file. So in terms of registering your bylaws, as I've said, this can no longer be done as a paper process. It must be done electronically. And so from 11th of October, you need to do this through what we call an electronic lodgement network operator. And there's basically two platforms that support this at the moment. PEXA, which is the more established one, and there's another one called Simply. Now, the only people that can use PEXA and access PEXA and effectively make changes around land dealings on behalf of clients are what we call subscribers, and that's effectively in a law firm or a licensed conveyancer. So that's a big change because in the past, a lot of strata managers have actually done this work on behalf of owners corporations. Now they can no longer do that, so they need to engage a subscriber. Now the subscriber, so a firm like ours, we need to do a couple of things. Firstly, we need a client authorization. So that's the form that you can see there on the right, and that essentially gives us the authority to act on behalf of the landowner. We also need to do a verification of identity, or a VOI. And again, depending on who's signing this document, it's either the strata manager or it could be the committee. And so we need to do a verification for, say, strata managers, applies for 2 years, and it actually can be done electronically. So there's companies such as InfoTrack that charge about $10 per person. And basically it's like a webinar where we just do a verification of identity. And then finally, we basically have to establish on our end that, that there is a right to deal over the land. So once all of those requirements are in place, we can effectively take your client authorization form, we can take your signed form 15CH, and then we submit that electronically via PEXA. Now, the other change that this is brought in is that basically once these documents are registered on title, you won't actually be given a title search. You'll be given what we call an information notice. And it's very similar to what the current registration notice is, whereby it specifies the dealings that are being registered. So for example, a change of bylaws. It'll also record the dealing number. So remember, every time you change or amend your bylaws, you get a unique dealing number, which is recorded on the title. And it'll also include information about when it was registered and also the subscriber's reference as well. So that will give you comfort to know that the bylaw has been registered. Now, my last point there is really important, and a lot of people some people don't realize this, is your bylaw is not valid or enforceable until it's registered. So really, until you get that information notice, I think it's safe to assume that your bylaw hasn't been registered. And it's really important. So for example, if you've got a bylaw that, say, changes the position around animals, or you might have a bylaw that an owner has basically passed to give them permissions to do renovations to their bathroom, and that bylaw might, for example, have obligations around sort of damage to common property, that document, that legal document, is not valid or enforceable until it's registered. So that's a really important point to note. So that is I suppose the main changes coming out of from the 11th of October. And my last slide, I just list a couple of other dealings that are affected by this change. Now, these are obviously a lot less common than, say, a change of bylaws, but things like if you're terminating your strata scheme, or if your scheme is part of there's a strata management statement, so it's, say, a mixed use strata scheme, well then if there's any amendments to the management statement, that also would need to be done via this process. Okay, so yeah, that's the changes coming up on the 11th, Nikki.
Okay, and we have a lot of readers as well who don't have a strata manager, David, and they're dealing with these issues from a self-managed point of view. So would any of the steps change, or what does the process differ at all? Do they get in touch with you at an earlier stage? Or
yeah, look, not really. So they obviously would be signing the form 15CH on behalf of the owners corporation, the committee, probably, you know, 1 or 2 committee members. And we would obviously then need to do a verification of identity of those committee members. But you know, nothing really changes beyond that.
Okay, wonderful, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, that's really great. And I know that Bugden Allen Graham Lawyers has recently released a new platform, and I think you've mentioned it on a few of the slides that we've covered already, but it looks like a great platform to actually assist people with the new process. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the process, David, how the platform works and how you can help streamline the process for people.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Yeah, well, look, I suppose it's a quite amazing timing, really, because we've been working on this system for about 18 months, 2 years, and we've just sort of launched, the first version of it for New South Wales. It's called ByLaw Builder, and it's a technology platform that enables apartment owners or committees or even strata managers that can go online, they can register for free, and then they can generate bylaws for their scheme. So whether it's just a new animals bylaw, or they may be doing renovations to their apartment, or it might even be a new scheme and they need a complete set of bylaws. So the platform kind of supports both of those scenarios. And then the system also manages all the workflow around the consolidation. So our team uses it to do that preparation of the Form 15CH. But because the way the system works is all the bylaws in the platform are digital. So when we kind of do the consolidation work once, we never really have to do it again because the bylaws are all stored in the system. And once they're set up in the system, you can do things like you can email them to tenants. You can also basically print out a QR code. So it's like a flyer with a QR code, and maybe put it up on your notice board or on the lift or something like that. And then basically anyone that visits the property can just scan on their mobile phone and get access to a digital copy of their bylaws. You can also just go on the system to get some quotes for bylaws, or if you want your bylaws reviewed, our team can capture some documents online and then we'll sort of get back to you. So yeah, really excited about it. And as I say, I think the timing is fantastic with these changes coming into New South Wales. But I probably should point out that, we suspect that that other jurisdictions will follow very soon, and this, pretty quickly will become a standard process all around Australia.
Excellent, thank you. And I love the idea of using the QR codes to access things like bylaws. We get asked regularly, how do I get in touch with somebody so that I can get a copy of my bylaws, and that makes it nice and simple for everyone to be able to download them. And I think QR codes have come into their own over the last year or so.
Yeah, everyone's pretty used to it, aren't they?
They are. So I think it makes the system really, really easy, and it's great to have that access there. So that's wonderful. Thanks so much, David, for running through that. Do you have any more information to cover with us?
No, I think that's it. So obviously, if there are any questions that come out of the presentation, feel free to reach out to us, and I'll also share a copy of it. So hopefully, that'll be a good resource for your readers.
Excellent, thank you so much. And we'll be including the link to the presentation in the article, which should be just below this video if you're watching. And we'll also include David's contact details so you can get in touch with him if you'd like some more information about either the actual new processes that are coming in or the ByLaw Builder as well. And we'll also include a link to the ByLaw Builder so you can jump on and have a look at that too. All right, thank you so much, David. Really great that you could inform all of our viewers and readers as to what's happening on the 11th of October in New South Wales.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Nikki.
Okay, thank you. See you later.
Yes, bye.